Now, during the Navy SEALs' daring raid on Osama bin Laden's Pakistani compound, they managed to extract not only bin Laden's body, but also computers, thumb drives, handwritten notes, according to the president. Now, a treasure trove of information about the al-Qaeda terror network was obtained. And according to the CIA, the data found inside the compound is the size of a small college library. Now, among the information found inside were 5 videotapes of bin Laden, which the government released over the weekend. Now, they show bin Laden inside the mansion, huddling under a blanket, watching himself on television, changing the channel whenever President Obama appears. Now, others show him appearing in the propaganda messages that he released to the world. In these staged videos, he is clearly made to look younger and healthier by dyeing his gray beard jet black. And joining us with analysis of these newly released images is the chair of Keep America Safe, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, Liz Cheney. Liz, welcome back.
Thanks, Sean. Good to be back with you.
First of all, am I the only one? I haven't heard many people comment on this, but why would we tell the world that we got this treasure trove of information? Because if you're connected to bin Laden in any way, I would assume right now that you're not living where you were living. You're not communicating the same way you were communicating. That seems to me to be a really dumb thing to do.
Well, I think it's not a surprise that there would be a treasure trove there. You know, I think we may be beginning to get to the point where we're hearing too many details, frankly. I think, you know, I'd like folks not to be sharing quite so much. But I feel pretty confident that there's an awful lot going on that you and I don't know about, that we shouldn't know about, certainly that our enemies don't know about, that the professionals inside the Central Intelligence Agency and in other agencies are doing tremendous work. I feel pretty safe saying to exploit those things that they've found inside the compound. So I think as long as we don't hear too much more publicly about specifics, you can imagine that they will be able to have more successes on top of this one.
All right, in the next segment, what I mentioned with Dick Morris, we're going to play this tape of Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace. I thought he asked a really good question of the White House National Security Advisor about, you know, enhanced interrogations are contrary to American values. Well, is that worse than putting a bullet in the brain of bin Laden? I mean, I thought the answer was weak. We'll show it in a minute, but go ahead.
No, I think you're exactly right, and I thought it was a great question that Chris asked, because this administration, you know, even before they came into office, worked hard to try to score political points by making allegations that simply weren't true about the enhanced interrogation program and trying to act as though it was somehow counter to American values. Now, I don't think, you know, probably most people watching tonight have no problem at all. I certainly don't. I know you don't, with the fact that the Navy SEALs killed Osama bin Laden. But if it's okay to go after terrorists to do targeted assassinations, which I believe it is, and the administration seems to believe it is, then it's very hard to understand how it's not okay from their perspective to subject terrorists to the very same techniques that our own people have to go through in SEER training. And a very specific example of this is Chick Burlingame, who was the pilot of American Airlines Flight 77, who was killed by the terrorists. Exactly. And he himself was subjected to these techniques. So I think it's pretty appalling that the administration is trying to score political points here, trying to sustain a position that's unsustainable. And frankly, that makes us less safe, because it means if we do, in fact, capture somebody as a result of this treasure trove, there's no really effective way we've got in place right now to interrogate them.
Do you believe what happened in the killing of bin Laden vindicates? Your father was a fierce, strong advocate, is to this day, of enhanced interrogations, black sites, rendition policies, all the things that President Obama canceled.
I think that it certainly shows that those programs worked. I think it is yet one more piece of evidence. We knew that those programs were effective before. We now know that they helped lead us to the information that ultimately led to bin Laden. And I think once again, you know, it shows that the administration, as you were saying in the last segment, they ought to stop this investigation, stop this threat of prosecution of those Americans who, in fact, bravely carried out these programs. It's really an abomination that they're continuing to live under the threat of indictment and the threat of prosecution for something that led to the death of bin Laden.
All right, the president was on 60 Minutes last night with Steve Kroft and asked why he did not release the pictures of bin Laden. Here's what he said.
Did you see the pictures?
Yes.
What was your reaction when you saw them?
It was him.
Why haven't you released them?
You know, we discussed this internally. It is important for us to make sure that very graphic photos of somebody who was shot in the head are not floating around as an incitement to additional violence, as a propaganda tool. You know, that's not who we are.
What do you think about the pictures? What did you think about the funeral following Islamic custom on the USS Carl Vinson? 40-minute funeral translated into Arabic. What did you think about all that?
You know, I actually, you know, I think you could come down on either side of the issue of the pictures. I think now, particularly since al-Qaeda has come out and announced and confirmed, in fact, that bin Laden's dead, there's less of a need for that confirmation out there. What really troubled me about that interview with the president was part of it you didn't play, where as part of his explanation for not releasing the pictures, he suggested that, you know, we wouldn't like it if someone killed an American soldier and released those pictures. Which struck me as very odd, though, that the President of the United States would immediately go to a comparison between bin Laden and American soldiers. I just, you know, sometimes his reasoning leaves me a bit confused, frankly.
By the way, I think your dad was right, and we'll get into this a little bit more as we move forward, is that the CIA interrogators that are under investigation after they had been cleared in the Bush years, I think they ought to be decorated and not face prosecution. Do you want Eric Holder to stop this attack against them?
Absolutely. And don't forget, the President of the United States could stop it himself. It's not just Eric Holder. The President is the chief law enforcement officer. He ought to stand up tomorrow and say, these brave men helped lead us to bin Laden. They've been cleared once. They ought not to have to continue under the threat of prosecution. All
right, Liz Cheney, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it. All the best to your dad. And still ahead tonight on Hannity, we're going to tell you what were these Boston women protesting in their underwear. And when speaking about the Obama administration's war on terror policies, one White House official seems to contradict himself. Now, we've got the tape from Fox News Sunday coming up next. Now, some on the left are still refusing to admit that enhanced interrogation tactics played an essential role in capturing the world's most notorious terrorists, even though CIA Director Leon Panetta has already confirmed that waterboarding helped get information that led to bin Laden's location and killing. Now, in order to maintain the appearance of an administration that is supposedly against tough interrogation practices, other White House officials are busy trying to spin a different story, but they just seem to be contradicting themselves in the process. Now, yesterday, Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace challenged National Security Advisor Tom Donilon on why this administration thinks that it's okay to kill bin Laden, but not okay to torture other terrorists like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Why is shooting an unarmed man in the face legal and proper, while enhanced interrogation, including waterboarding of a detainee under very strict controls and limits, why is that over the line? Why can't you do enhanced interrogation of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was just as bad an operator as Osama bin Laden?
Yeah, because, well, our judgment is that it's not consistent with our values.
But shooting bin Laden in the head is consistent with our values.
We are at war with Osama bin Laden.
We're at war with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
It was a military operation, right? It was absolutely appropriate for the SEALs to take the action and for the forces to take the action that they took in this military operation against
why
the military
is it inappropriate
target.
to get information on from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed?
Well, I didn't say it was inappropriate to get information from Khalid.
You said it was against our values.
Sheikh Mohammed. I think that the techniques are something there's been a policy debate about, and our administration has made our views known on that.
And just a short time ago in Paris, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder reaffirmed the administration's commitment to closing Gitmo despite the critical role that the facility played in getting bin Laden. Joining me now with reaction, Fox News political analyst Kirsten Powers, Fox News anchor, analyst, former prosecutor Kimberly Guilfoyle. Guys, good to see you. This was such a great question. All props out to Chris. You know, how do you justify that? Kirsten, I mean, we can kill bin Laden, but we can't, under very strict guidelines and circumstances, extract information from people like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Well, I mean, it's exactly what he said. We're at war with him. We're
at war with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
We had an authorization from Congress to basically go after the people who were responsible for 9/11, and this was, he was the head of Al-Qaeda. They went after the head of Al-Qaeda, and I think they killed him. It would be like saying you can't go to war. I mean, what's
well,
this
saying,
is?
Well, wait a minute.
But are you saying because we go to war, or because, for example, we we do the death penalty, that therefore we can do anything that we want?
No.
I mean, that's the argument.
Kimberly, this is what the left is saying here. They're trying to thread this needle because they want this in the court system.
Sure.
You know, the same administration wants Miranda rights for enemy combatants on the battlefield.
That's right.
That's not going to work in a war.
It's not going to work. It's not realistic. And the same policies and practices that they said were inappropriate, were illegal, were torture, were actually legally approved. They also did an investigation of the very CIA agents and lawyers that approved these techniques that carried them out. And these are the people that, in part, they can't deny it, their own CIA director said it, led ultimately to capturing and killing bin Laden.
But what he said was...
Give credit where credit is due.
But what he said was that it was intel that came from the interrogation of detainees. He did not say that it came from waterboarding. And in fact, based on what we know, which granted there's been a lot of different information, it did not come from waterboarding.
No.
It came from later. And, they actually gave bad information.
Let me, first of all, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed opened the door to this courier first.
Yes, he
not
did.
under waterboarding.
Well, we don't know when we got it out of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
At some point.
One of 3 people waterboarding. Hang on, let me finish. Then the courier, you know, we got information from Libby and others using black rendition sites where CIA interrogators got information.
There's so many different things here. First of all, just because let's just say they got it from waterboarding, which they didn't. But I'm just going to say if they did, that would not prove that the only way to get it is from waterboarding.
You're not addressing the question.
I am addressing the question.
How do you justify putting a bullet in somebody's brain is okay?
Yeah, it's
morally
double speak.
justified.
Double speak.
But waterboarding or interrogation is contrary to our values. No. Focus on that question.
I am. We live on a continuum here where we make distinctions between self-defense. You know, do you think there's a difference between locking someone in your trunk and suffocating them to death and self-defense? Yes, we can make a distinction.
Kirsten, you are making no sense here.
I'm making a distinction. I'm making a moral distinction from different things.
You put a bullet in one guy's head, and that's morally okay. You interrogate people, you sleep deprive them, you waterboard them, only 3 people. You get information that leads to bin Laden. Would you say that Bush was right and Obama was wrong?
No.
No.
Because I don't think it had anything to do with it.
Bin Laden wouldn't be dead today.
That's absolutely, totally contrary to all of the information that we have.
But it's not.
Leon Panetta did not say that.
And the reality, there's a direct link,
no, there isn't.
Kirsten. Yes, there is, between the enhanced interrogation techniques that were used by the CIA. Yes, by the CIA, and what happened with bin Laden. It's a direct.
They gave, what we know is under the enhanced interrogation, they gave out bad information.
No.
They actually didn't answer the question.
No, but that helped reinforce. They thought by the way that they answered, as they put these pieces together, and this is where the intelligence community deserves all the credit. The original thread began with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Then it was reinforced by Libby and others. Again, all enhanced interrogation in both instances. Let me finish. And that led to bin Laden. That led to the courier. That led to his nickname. That led to his real name. That led to eavesdropping. That led to bin Laden's door.
It was years after the waterboarding that he gave up that information.
Right, it took years to find the courier.
No. It was years after the waterboarding and interrogations that were not necessarily enhanced interrogations.
You just can't give Bush credit.
This is for what?
This is directly from Leon Panetta. This is what we're saying. We're not saying it's completely due to it, but at least in part. And in fact, people who are on Homeland Security who are in charge of this, and in fact, Leon Panetta said it himself.
Leon Panetta did not say that.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did. He is on the record saying it because you know what? At least he's many sources.
Intelligence came from many sources,
would bin Laden be alive today but for these techniques? I argue, yes, he would be alive today. And I'm glad that the president made the decision, and I'm glad that Bush put in place the policies to get us the intelligence.
And yes, the interrogation program. And yeah, he would be alive and at large. And you know what? Give credit to everyone. Give credit to the Obama administration. Give credit to the Bush administration. And please restart this CIA interrogation program that is very valuable. These people were maligned.
Why are you so resistant to admitting?
There's nothing wrong with interrogating people, but the idea that because you think that waterboarding led to this, which it didn't, that means that's the only way you can get it. It's just wrong. It's just flawed logic. Let me ask you one last question. If you're in a parking lot and you have 3 children or 2 children with you, and 3 guys take your 2 kids, throw them in a van, but you hold on to one of the I would do
captors.
anything.
You would do anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand
so wait
that
a minute.
argument.
So then why wouldn't we do it as a country to protect against those that killed 3,000 people?
Because we would all do certain things in the heat of the moment
How about
that are not necessarily
how about if you had the guy in your house for a month
that
later
are not necessarily legal? There's a difference between the government doing something, and here's another reason.
There's a difference between a war and
here's the most important reason. Because you can get that information without doing that, and you actually can get bad information.
But you can put a bullet in his brain. That's okay.
Yeah, how can you shoot somebody dead like Bin Laden, but you can't do enhanced interrogation on Khalid Sheikh Mohammed where it works?
Guys, good to see you. I appreciate you. Frustrated? So am I. Coming up, a police officer's comments have sparked international protests, calling, quote, for slut walk rallies. Slut walk? What is a slut walk? We'll explain. And our great American panel, Bob Beckles, here and more straight ahead.